When the journey to your baby seems so far away, when you feel like there is no end in sight, where you wish that someone could just tell you when you'll be pregnant, because then at least you'll be able to handle everything in between. If this is how you have ever felt as you've been trying to conceive your own family, then this episode is going to resonate with you as we are going to be discussing all of that and more. Today, I am chatting with a very special guest who will go through how you can support your body, your mind, and your mental health when you're struggling to conceive, and how she was able to lean into that knowing that she would end up with her family. This is a story that you won't want to miss. Welcome to Your Journey to Fertility. This is the podcast that blends both science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Here each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so you can stop stressing that you'll never have a baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for you to hear today's episode because sometimes it just helps to get a little bit of inspiration from someone who has been there and someone who has made it to the other side of their own fertility journey. I first met Elle just over a year ago when she had already experienced several losses, and she came to me wanting something that would reconnect her with her body. She felt, in her words, pretty broken. Elle had been through several doctors who had kind of dismissed her losses as something that, she shouldn't worry about or that she could just try again with. And the more that she experienced the heartbreak of loss and repeated loss, the more she felt like she was losing herself in the process. Elle started her yoga practice with me to give her body what it was craving: nourishment, rest, time alone, and finding that sense of capability again. But she also ended up with a pregnancy that stuck. And I have been so incredibly lucky to watch her journey from then until now. This episode is such a beautiful conversation, and you'll be able to hear her little girl occasionally in the background as well, who is now 5 months old. And as this episode goes live, we will be on the countdown to the launch of my In Your Element fertility yoga program. This is the program that Elle joined last year, and it is something that I only offer once per year because I like to keep the group size quite small so that I can give everyone as much individualized attention as possible. It is a way of using these incredible practices of fertility yoga, breath work, meditation, mindset work, manifestation work to really support your journey, your fertility journey, your body, to help synchronize and balance out your hormones, to ease that stress and anxiety of trying to conceive, and most importantly, I think, to help you regulate your nervous system, which is going to help your life in a myriad of ways in the meantime. Now, if this is something that you would like to try for yourself or just to learn a little bit more about, pop your name down on the waitlist and I can send you a little bit more information for you to have a read through. And you can find the waitlist link via elementpilatesyoga.com/waitlist, or just find the link down in the show notes. This conversation is what I wish I'd heard years ago when I was struggling to conceive, and I hope it cracks open some space of possibility for you too. So let's get started. Here's Elle. Elle, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I'm really excited.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Can we start off today just by giving everyone who's listening a little bit of an idea about who you are, and if you don't mind sharing where your fertility journey kind of started, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I live in Cambridge with my partner, and about, was it 5 years ago, 4 years ago now, it must have been 5 years, we decided we were ready to start a family. And our first journey was kind of, I feel kind of guilty saying this on a fertility podcast, but it was kind of the dream, scenario. I we started not even really trying, but just not preventing. Fell pregnant very, very quickly, and that's my daughter. So that was like just, bam, done, fantastic. And looking back on, who I was at that point in my life, like, if you can believe it, I took like one pregnancy test. Like the day I found out, like I tested that day. And with what I know now, I couldn't have even been that far along. It must have only been about 9, 10 days post ovulation. Like, it wasn't even like a very strong test, but I was just like, great, yep, having a baby next summer. Fantastic. That was it. We just sort of rolled on. But I had in the back of my head my whole life that secondary infertility was a bit of a thing. I'm an only child, and it's not because my parents didn't want any more children. So I won't tell their story because I feel like it's theirs to tell. But they also experienced kind of recurrent pregnancy loss, and I'd known about that my whole life. So even though we'd had a really easy time the first time around, a little part of the back of my head had always thought, well, it's not always that easy the second time around. And I'd sort of had this weird feeling that it might happen to us. And everyone had told me, oh, you're just being anxious about it. Don't worry. And then we came to decide, we wanted a second, and we started trying. And again, we fell pregnant very, very quickly. But that baby, didn't make it home with us, and neither did, several of the next ones. And it's the sort of strange feeling, kind of having told myself, oh, don't be silly. This isn't going to happen to you. You're just feeling anxious because of what happened to your parents. And then having it kind of, come true. And you're sort of like, is this anxiety or intuition? You start really doubting yourself and the world. So yeah, we experienced several losses in a really short space of time. It was a really, really intense period of time. And it was during that process of sort of working out all the different jigsaw pieces of our journey that I found fertility yoga, and found you and your wonderful program. And now we have our 5-month-old daughter, second daughter, who is just the most lovely, lovely sunshine, and has been a really healing experience. It was a really, wonderful pregnancy. A lot of anxiety, of course, and a lot of having to hold that hope and that fear at the same time. But really, very healing birth experience. My experience with my first daughter was not good. Very healing breastfeeding journey. Again, my first experience was not good. And really, we've ended up in a really beautiful kind of place now. But I really wish I could go back and sort of tell myself, a year and a half ago, this is where we would be, because I just had no idea if we'd ever see the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. And it's so hard when you're in the thick of it, isn't it? And you, in hindsight, you just wish you could go back to that person and say, it's okay. It's only going to be another few months. You hang in there. You will get everything that you want. But leaning into that at the time is so much harder than anyone would ever guess.
Yeah, I remember thinking at the time, like, if I could just know how it was going to end, I could put up with however much of it. Like, even if I knew it was going to be, however many miscarriages or however many months, if I just knew that at the end of it, it was going to be okay. But when you're sitting in that uncertainty of, are we going to go through all of this and never end up with another living baby, which is, so what happened to my parents, that fear and that anxiety was so difficult to hold. And yeah, on the other side of it, it's like, oh yes, of course it all worked out, and here we are, and it's great. But yeah, that in the moment, that feeling of, God, I can't see how this is going to end. You want to skip to the last chapter, and there's no way doing that. My motto, but the only way out is through.
I think that's a brilliant motto. And it's unavoidable, isn't it? I think so many people that are listening to this could resonate with that sentence. If I just knew how long this was going to take, I would be okay. Because you're right, you can put up with any amount of treatments and any amount of waiting if you know that it's going to work out. But yeah, being able to lean into that knowing is very hard. Do you think you got to that place where you knew it was going to happen for you? You just didn't know when? Or do you think that you always wondered?
I'm not sure if I reached a place. I think I never reached a place where I could see myself giving up. You know, I know that people do hit that point, but for me, it was something that I wanted so much that I couldn't see what was going to like make me stop. So it was like, you know, I don't know how much heartbreak we're going to have to go through. I don't know how much, you know, how long it's going to take, any of these things, but I'm not going to give up.
Mm,
And I
absolutely.
might have hit that point at some point, you know, absolutely. There's no kind of, and people who walk away from treatments or fertility journeys without a baby, you know, that's its own very valid journey. But I wasn't anywhere kind of close to that
Mm,
point. So I still felt like somewhere in the distance is our baby. But the thing about recurrent pregnancy loss is it makes you feel a bit like, I saw something the other day that was like, it makes you feel like the girl who cried pregnancy.
mm,
Um, and I totally resonated with that, where it was like, you know, every time you see those two lines and you see, you know, and you're like, okay, maybe this one. But there's no feeling of security for so long with it, because you're so used to it being like maybe and then pulled away, maybe and then pulled away, that it took me like quite a long time into this pregnancy to really believe that she was coming home.
mm.
Even though every kind of, you know, sign and every stage that we had was great. Yeah, it was almost like I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of it not ending.
Definitely. I think I resonate with that a lot as well. I don't know what point I would have given up at, but I was not there as hard as it was going to be. If you don't mind sharing, Elle, were you ever given any reason or any idea as to why it was so easy for you the first time and then you had so many losses the second?
I think we had a bit of a jigsaw puzzle of different, you know, possible contributing things, and we never got any kind of solid, firm answers on our losses. I think the things that we discovered that made a difference were, we found that I was very insulin resistant. So blood sugars were normal, but my insulin levels were very, very high to accommodate for that.
Mm.
And apparently that it can be really toxic to developing placenta. So I went on myoinosocil and metformin to kind of help with that. And the other thing that I think made a big difference was osteopathy.
Mm.
So with my first daughter, I had a very, very long induction process with hyperstimulation, you know, really, really quite intense contractions. And since then, I've had a lot of pain, pelvic pain, lower back pain, really bad cramping all through my luteal phase, as well as sort of menstrual cramps. And I just sort of thought that was normal after you had a baby.
Mm.
You know, like, well, being a woman involves a lot of cramping, doesn't it? And then I spoke to a friend who was like, no, that's not normal. You need to go see Teddy. And she sent me to her osteopath. And he found a lot of kind of really, really tight imbalance in my ligaments, which apparently can happen after you've had Pitocin, that causes the uterus to contract harder than it would otherwise and not relax fully. So my uterus was sort of pulled into a bit of a weird shape, which might have been making it hard for those babies to implant as deeply as they needed to.
Mm.
So after some readjustment there, my cramping cleared up, it went away,
Mm.
and my next pregnancy was successful. So I'll never know kind of what
Mm.
combination of those things made the difference. And then, of course, finding fertility yoga and just sort of treating my body a bit
Mm.
more kind of kindly. I don't know if that helped with the pregnancy success or just with my kind of mental sanity in the meantime, but it was also for me a big part of my kind of puzzle piece of making that journey work.
I think that's so true. I wish so much more than anything, I just had a magic wand. And then everyone who worked with me, I could be like, right, 2 months, I guarantee you'll have your baby. But obviously, whilst I wish that was the case, you know, what I can always tell people is that by going through these practices, you give yourself back your body. You know, you give yourself back that kind of connection that you lose when you go through something like pregnancy loss and infertility. And, your body just feels like this foreign thing, like it can't do the thing that it was designed to do. And we end up going to so many appointments and go through so many procedures that your body is just no longer your own. You really are, you have all of your power taken away. And whilst it is always my goal to support people as they can go through their journey of falling pregnant, it is also so important, not just for pregnancy, but for the rest of your life, just to be able to come home to your body and know that you're capable, and to know that you have all of these tools at your disposal, and it can make your life so much easier in the process. So thank you for sharing that. Do you mind talking
Absolutely.
a little bit about your work, and how did you find that when you were struggling to have your second?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a doula. That's my day job. I'm a birth worker, and I came to that after I had my first daughter, and saw just how broken the maternity system is and how much kind of support people need. And I got really passionate about birth advocacy, and birth is this kind of transformative moment in your life that however you give birth, it matters. It really, really matters. And how you're treated in that moment matters
Mm.
so much. So I went off and I retrained and I became a doula, and I love it. I love the work I do. It's just an endless privilege to get to support people having their babies and to get to be present for that moment. But it was a very intense job to be doing while going through my own kind of fertility journey in both good and bad ways. You're spending a lot of energy kind of pouring into other people. And like, for example, my first miscarriage, I realized that I was having a miscarriage when I was at a birth. Like I was, I started having the cramps and the bleeding, but I was there with a client, and it's her. She's the focus of today, and you just have to completely put yourself aside, and because that's what you're there to do. You're there to kind of hold her, and you get kind of used to that and having to sort of support other people so much. But also, it did also um, help me in some ways to sort of be reminded that pregnancies do end in babies as well. Like, I was going through this, thing where getting pregnant and losing it over and over, but then getting to see this is the end, right? This is, if I can get through this point, this is what's at the end, this joy and this triumph. And lots of the women that I was supporting had their own, miscarriage is so common and infertility is so common. A huge percentage of the women I was supporting have had their own fertility, challenges. And so seeing someone meet their baby born after loss, seeing someone meet their baby born after IVF, these moments of really intense, power. And you can kind of see it and think, God, that can be, that can be me. That can be me in, a year or in, whatever. It gave me actually a lot of drive to keep going, even while being, quite an intense and I think the jealousy that we've all felt as well. You never want to feel jealous of a client, but getting to see someone meet their baby while you're kind of still yearning for yours can be really difficult as well. But I think my whole journey, including that part of it, has really taught me about holding extremes and about how the grief and the pain and the fear and all of these things is in some ways just the cost that we pay for the joy. And I've come to think of the miscarriages that way as well. The gift of being able to carry life also comes with this cost of possibly having to carry death within you as well. And that's part of how I've kind of made my peace with that, is coming to see that as kind of part of the same cycle and the same journey, and how that's sort of connected to everyone is all of the sort of women who've come and gone through that journey and that experience. Unfortunately, we can't have one without the other, or be lovely if we could.
It's incredible that you got to that place before you were pregnant with your little rainbow. When I was struggling to have my second, most of the work I did was pre and postnatal. So all of the women I saw either had big, beautiful pregnant bellies or gorgeous little babies with them. and it just broke me. And I wish I had had your strength. I don't think I quite got there to the point that you did. So thank you for sharing
It's
that.
so hard. It is so hard. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to respond to it.
Mm.
I'm someone who I strongly don't believe in toxic positivity. I think that we need to welcome all of the different feelings and the hard and all of that kind of stuff. But also in myself, I always try to find a way to make something kind of okay for myself. That will always be part of my coping in a moment, is thinking, this is really hard and it sucks and it's okay to not be okay right now. But what can I take from this? What is good about this? Because that just kind of helps me stay sane.
Absolutely. Can I ask you about secondary infertility? And I would love to hear your experiences of it. Mine were not positive. And I experienced both primary and secondary infertility. So it was really interesting to me to watch how the world around me responded to my fertility journey the second time around. Did you notice that you felt, I don't know if judged is the best word, but what were the reactions that you got from people when you were still struggling and you already had a baby?
Yeah, I mean, also, I don't have an experience of primary infertility, only secondary infertility, so I can't compare them personally. But I think that there's a sort of conception in society of like, well, you already have a baby, so it shouldn't be that hard, really, right? Should it? Like, you already have the thing that you want. This would just be a nice bonus. So, it's okay to want it, but if you can't have it, then you shouldn't really get too worked up about it. And my personal kind of family and friends were very, very supportive and very, love, which was absolutely wonderful. Weirdly, it was actually sort of medical professionals who I got the most.
Not weird at all. Common.
Midwives and GPs with the sort of, the kind of, well, you already have this nice, you already have your lovely daughter, so it'd be nice if we can help you get pregnant again or stay pregnant again. But it doesn't, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And you're like, well, I don't feel that way about it. I feel, really deep sense of longing, and, that my family is not complete. I don't feel like this is just, oh, well, okay, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And particularly you feel like I've done this before. I got pregnant, I grew a person, I gave birth to that person, my body's done this. Why is it not doing it again? This sort of feeling of deep confusion and almost kind of betrayal that comes from being like, but we've done this before. We did it. Why is it so hard this time? But yeah, I found that my medical team were very reluctant to order tests. They were very reluctant to prescribe medication. I was told progesterone wasn't going to make a difference, that I was losing pregnancies so early that they weren't really worth. I had one, had a sort of threatened miscarriage, and I asked for progesterone, and the midwife basically said, well, you're only 6 weeks or whatever, so it's not really worth trying to save this way. You can just get pregnant again. And I think that I don't know what it would have been like if it was my first baby, but I think that some of it was coming from this place of well, why are you making such a fuss? Because you already have a baby.
I'll ask you just one more question, and then we'll wrap it up, and we can get on with your day, beautiful. Okay.
No problem.
Can I ask you about your experiences with yoga? So before we met, was yoga something that you practiced?
Not regularly, no. Sort of on and off in the past. I've been to the odd yoga class. It was something we did in school, weirdly enough, when I was a child. But no, a regular yoga practice wasn't really part of my life before this at all. And honestly, I've joked in the past to people, I hate being told to breathe. Absolutely, I'm doing it already. I don't want to be told how to breathe. I was really kind of resistant to the idea of lots of the stuff that was, in yoga. It wasn't something that was particularly on my radar until I was, struggling to stay pregnant, and getting into the side of Instagram of other people who were struggling to stay pregnant or struggling to get pregnant. And suddenly I started seeing, stuff about infertility yoga. And I think at that stage, I was just so desperate to do anything different, to give back to myself in any way. So saying earlier about being a birth worker and you spending a lot of time pouring into other people, also true of being a mum, having a 2-year-old, 3-year-old child, you're spending a lot of time pouring out. And I just thought, I need to do something to pour in. The balance sheets here are wrong. I'm just like, hemorrhaging energy. And so if I can start carving out, and it was honestly mostly an excuse to just start carving out some time for myself. And I thought, well, if it helps with, fertility and stuff like that, that's a nice bonus. But it was more the kind of, the appeal of doing something to take care of myself. And I really loved the idea of syncing it with my cycle. So over the past few years, I've gotten so much more interested in cycles in terms of like within our bodies, within nature, across these things, these sort of synergy between these periods of like sprouting, blooming, ripening, and then sort of falling back, dormancy, the way that our bodies do that, as well as, the world around us does that. And so seeing something that was like, this is designed to go with your cycle and recognizes that there's a difference in how you're going to be, in your luteal phase versus your menstrual phase, really, really appealed to me. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And I think partially just that sort of magic of carving out some time for yourself, especially as a mom, and saying, no, this is non-negotiable. No one gets to come in and interrupt this time unless someone is bleeding out. I'm going into my room. I'm closing the door. I'm locking it. Like you can deal with whatever. And I have a very, very supportive partner who is, absolutely like, go take your time. But just giving myself permission to do that, I think wasn't really anyone else was stopping me from doing that. It was that kind of internal, I need to take this time for myself and give myself permission to need that. And I just found, as you were saying earlier, that kind of reclaiming a relationship with your body that isn't just about loss or treatment or, any of these things. And that is positive. I come to a place of feeling almost contaminated. Like you feel kind of broken inside, and starting to nurture yourself again and be kind to yourself again, and sort of had to come to a place of like almost forgiving my body for this. And it was a huge, the yoga practice was a huge part of that, of saying you deserve to be taken care of, even though this thing isn't working the way that we want it to. Your body still deserves to be taken care of. Your body's not the enemy. It's not something you need to be in battle with. It's something that you can show kindness to. That was a huge part of kind of shifting out of that mentality of frustration and anxiety and fear, and into a place of kind of acceptance that this was the journey we were on, and yes, it sucked, and it was shit, and I wish it wasn't, but that I was going to be okay, and that I could come through it with still a kind of positive relationship with my body intact. And that made a huge difference coming into this pregnancy with Eliza as well, because by that point, I felt positively enough about my body to be able to continue nurturing it, even though I was so kind of dissociated early on from the kind of idea of the baby at the end. And so I was able to, to continue with pregnancy practices and with all the lovely nutrition and all the wonderful things that we do to take care of our babies, even though early on the idea of it actually turning into a baby was so kind of alien.
These words of wisdom, Elle, I wish I had heard someone say that to me 5 years ago. I'm getting emotional just listening to you. And of course, it's something I discovered for myself in my own time as well. But gosh, I just wish someone had said that to me sooner. So thank you for sharing that. It is everything that you just shared then is everything that I want for my students, and the baby on top as well.
Yeah. Yes, but I say even, that it wasn't necessarily the kind of goal at the end about the baby. Even at that point, it was just about kind of yeah, God, I just need to not feel this way about myself anymore.
Absolutely. Goodness. Is there anything that you would say now to yourself before you settled onto that journey of healing, or any advice you would give to others who are currently on their own journey?
I mean, obviously, I said I wish I could go back and tell myself that it was all gonna work out. Obviously, we can't do that, and I wish I could go back and tell myself to be kinder to myself sooner. And again, we can't do that. But I guess I can say that to other people that it might feel like you are broken. You might feel guilt over what's happened. You might feel like your body's betrayed you. All of these really common, difficult, painful feelings. They're a feeling that we have in our head. They're not real. It's not the reality. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't done it. I used to feel like, what have I done to deserve this? Like, have I not been a good enough mom? Have I not, have I messed up in some way that means that I don't deserve to have another baby? And I just wish I could go back and talk to myself and say, this has nothing to do with how good a person you are. This has nothing to do with the choices you're making. This has nothing to do with right or wrong, or good or bad. This is a medical thing that's happening to you. And you don't need to feel guilt over it. And yeah, you deserve to be taken care of. You deserve your baby, but you also deserve kindness on the way. And yeah, I think that I wish I could go back and say that to myself. I got there eventually.
You did. And we can tell others that now as well, which is why I wanted you to share your story today, Elle, because you have always just had a beautiful energy and presence about you ever since I met you. And congratulations on your beautiful family. Thank you for sharing your journey with me and letting me be a part of it, and for sharing your story with others today. Can't thank you enough.
I hope it helps give some people, a bit of hope in the middle of everything.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to speak to you soon. Oh, that was such an amazing conversation. Thank you for sticking around for the end of all of that. I just love the way that Elle speaks about giving her body that time and space when she needed it. What a gift. If you found this episode helpful or inspiring in some way, please share it with someone, or let me know what you thought. I always love hearing your feedback about the episodes. Or if you can, leave a review, and that way we can help get this podcast out to more people who need to hear it. Just a quick reminder before we finish up that you have just 1 week left to get your name down on the wait list for my upcoming In Your Element fertility yoga program. I am going to be kicking off the launch week next week with a 3-part free live training series where we go in depth into some of these practices. We will be doing fertility yoga sequences, guided meditations, different breathwork practices, all of the ways in which you can use these tools to really support your fertility, help synchronize and balance out your hormones, regulate your nervous system, and make this journey of trying to conceive feel that much easier. So click the link down in the show notes. Let me know if you have any questions, and I can't wait to see you there. Now, on the next episode of the podcast, I am going to be sharing a part of my fertility journey which details exactly what I did differently in the weeks leading up to my positive pregnancy test. After years of fertility challenges, IVF cycles that didn't work, miscarriage, this is what I did to finally bring my baby home. And I promise I will try not to cry on this one. So I can't wait to have you back then. Until next time, I'm sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.